Admission Chat is brought to you by the Standard Application Online. Save 14 hours or more when applying to at least 3 private schools. Start saving time today at admission.org/apply.
Welcome to Admission Chat. Let's talk about interviewing. Hey there, I'm Darren Worcester, and in this discussion, I'm happy to be joined by Kyla McCann, the Dean of Admission and Financial Aid at the Bolles School in Jacksonville, Florida, as well as Lisa Pelrine, the Director of Enrollment Management at Chapel Hill-Chauncy Hall in Waltham, Massachusetts. Kyla and Lisa, welcome to Admission Chat.
Thank you.
Hi, Darren. Thanks for having us.
Thank you both for joining me. I'm really excited for this conversation. Let's start by having you each tell us a little bit about yourselves and your career in private schools and in admission departments. I'm going to go alphabetical order, so Kyla, why don't you go first?
My name is Kyla McCann, and I'm currently at the Bolles School here in Jacksonville, Florida. I believe I'm in the start of my 10th month, so you can ask me lots of things about admission, maybe not just finite things about Bolles just yet, but I'm working on it. I started my career, like most admission folks, just by happenstance. I worked for my alma mater college in Ontario, Canada, in the recruitment department, and bit the bug. And from there, moved into this wonderful world of independent schools, working for Fulford Academy, and then on to Darlington School, and then Fountain Valley. So I've made a trek all the way back down to Florida, which is really where it sort of all began for me in terms of my career. And right now, I'm happy to say I'm enjoying the sun and sand. Sorry, Lisa.
I won't hold it against you.
So, Lisa, despite us being in the Northeast and jealous of Kyla's tan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your career, please?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Pelrine, Director of Enrollment Management here at Chapel Hill-Chauncy Hall School in Waltham, Massachusetts. It's currently a high of 32 right now, so very jealous of Kyla. I actually went to business school and did recruitment for software engineers prior to coming to CHCH, and kind of just like Kyla, we just kind of all fall into this job in different ways. But so I've spent my entire career at CHCH. This is my 19th year, which is amazing that I've been here for so long, but it's also gone by so quickly. So pretty much have grown up here. So in addition to being Director of Enrollment Management, I did spend 10 years as a dorm parent on campus until I started my own family, and then decided, my two little girls are more challenging than raising 26 teenage girls somehow. Never thought I would say that. And did some coaching, but I just love being able to take my business background and being able to apply it to the admissions world, and being in a small boarding school and day school, things are constantly changing. So in particular this past year, so things are always different. I'm also a board member on the Small Boarding School Association. I'm the chair of the conference committee. So I also enjoy my work supporting that board as well.
Excellent. Thank you both for joining. Let's take a minute now, too, to kind of give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit about your wonderful schools. Lisa, why don't you go first this time?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, CHCH for short, is in Waltham, Massachusetts. We're lucky enough that we're about 10 miles outside of Boston, which is incredibly helpful, just having a day in boarding school. We're about 60% day, 40% boarding. We have about 20% international students, which is really, really cool and amazing to work with students from around the globe. But we're a small school. We're grades 9 through 12 and offer a postgraduate program. We are co-ed, but our motto here is we teach the way students learn. And so we are a college prep school, but sometimes we're working with students who just don't reach their full potential in that traditional big public high school. Our kids are super bright and capable, but we have an amazing academic support program here at CHCH that allows students to continue to access a traditional college prep curriculum, but maybe teaching them skills around executive function, for example. We have an amazing performing and visual arts program. We just opened a new arts building last year, right when the pandemic hit. So we're finally getting to use it this school year, which has been great. And we also have a number of varsity and JV sports as well. So we have the athletics program as well. But, just really that small, close-knit community feel where students are really able to kind of roll up their sleeves and really, get interactive with their teaching and learning here. So it's been really an amazing place for me to see so many kids being able to kind of have that transformative experience. And now having been here so long, seeing them as young adults and just kind of continuing their success. So it's a great little gem in Waltham, Massachusetts.
Awesome. Thank you. Keela, how about you?
So the Bolles School is located in Northeast Florida in Jacksonville. I can say that in comparison to my time just recently out in Colorado, the weather certainly helps with us, especially when you're looking to play those outdoor sports year round. So that's a win-win for us. It's always amazing to me to see swimmers in the pool in January, which is outdoors. Year round.
Just keep rubbing it in. Keep rubbing it in.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We are pre-K through 12 school, co-ed. Again, as Lisa said, college preparatory with a very small boarding program. I would say Bolles is probably most well known for our pre-Olympic swimming program. Many folks look at us for our swimming program. However, one of the things that I've learned about Bolles, which is refreshing, but also is interesting in terms of the students that look at us, we don't do anything halfway. So, if we're going to build a new complex such as another outdoor pool, then it's done to the very highest level. Our athletic program is quite robust, and many of our students here at Bolles are student athletes. We're a very large school with 1,640 students. So as you can imagine, there's never a dull moment. And so, for me, one of the adjustments has been coming from a fairly small school, such as Lisa's school, to then transitioning into this very large school where there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of factors. And so it's changed how I look at admission and how I look at the students that are looking to come to Bolles. As I said, it has a very small boarding program. However, if you look at the student makeup of Bolles, it's actually quite diverse, and Jacksonville is quite a diverse city. And so, we have students who are coming from all walks of life and from all over parts of the world and represent many different groups, which is awesome. I think because we're a day school, many people would think that wasn't the case, but it would absolutely be completely the opposite. Much like Lisa's school, again, it's college preparatory, and at Bolles, we believe all things are possible. So we want our students to really excel in many different areas and not just in, the one area that they're passionate about, but really to take a bite out of many aspects. And I think the beauty of independent schools is really being able to engage on a deeper level, both in and outside of the classroom, and trying many new things. And that, I would say, Bolles is definitely a place where that can happen.
Great. Thank you both for giving us the insight into your schools. So our topic today is really focused on interviewing and the interviewing process. And I'm just going to kind of jump right in with the big question that I think probably parents want to know, and students as well, as they're going into the process is, what are you looking for in a student in the interview process? Keela, why don't you go first?
I think for me, I want to know organically who that student is, why they want this experience, and how they plan to leverage this experience. And I don't mean I want to go to, a great college. That's not, this has to mean more than just a place you're going to school. This has to have some sort of, this has to be a place where you can really achieve all the things that you want to achieve, but also try many new things and explore and take some healthy risks and leap off the ledge. And so when I interview, I really want to hear from the student. Why does the student want this? Not why their parents want this, not the formed answers, not the rehearsed answers. I want to know that you've done your research and that you've said, you know what, I read your online student newspaper, and I think it is the coolest thing ever. And here's some articles that I've written that I think I could contribute. I want to know that they've really done their homework. I also am not interested, it's fascinating. I think many of us will say, well, where else are you looking? Just out of curiosity. And really what we're looking for are there correlations between those schools? It's not to know who our competitors are. It's to say, how much homework have they done? Because, and I know Lisa will agree, if a student's looking at Bolles and they're looking at CHCH, I mean, there's very little similarity other than we're an independent school. And so, I'm looking to sort of find out where that similarity is, if that is the case. So in the interview, I really am looking organically at why the child wants this. I think it's a little harder at middle and lower school, but certainly in the upper school, definitely.
Perfect. Thank you. Lisa, how about yourself?
Yeah, and I would agree with many of the things that Kyla said. And I think, at the end of the day, I want to see that authenticity from a student, right? I just want to see who they are in an everyday situation. And I always tell families, like, we want them to be comfortable, just kind of come as themselves, don't dress up in a suit and tie because we don't have a dress code. And then the student's so, uncomfortable during the interview. We just want to see who they are. And, for us, I think you have to know the mission of your school and what students do best. And, it's not every student who interviews at your school is going to be the best fit. So I think it's all about finding the best fit, both for us as a school, but also for the family as well. And so for us, students might not have been successful in their current learning environment, and that's why they are looking at other options, right? And so for me, I really have to peel back the layers of that student's profile, because it's not one size fits all. It's really, can the student have the potential to be successful here at the school, and what does that look like? How do they see themselves here? And for those kids coming from a public school, it is much more of a commitment. Like Kyla said, you aren't only going to be having to show up every day and participate in your academics and being part of that learning process. You might be going from a classroom of, 25 kids to a classroom of 8, and you can't hide. So you're on, right? And that looks different for everyone. We're not going to obviously call you out, make you feel uncomfortable, but you really do have to be part of that learning process and be willing to kind of roll up your sleeves and get in there and be curious and want to try new things. But we also do require the co-curricular program every day after school for them to participate either in something with the arts or the athletic program. So they're not, getting home till 5:30 sometimes for the day students. So it is a bigger commitment. So just really making sure the family understands that and are ready, to be a part of your entire school community, not just the academic piece. So I think it's really important just to really get a sense of who that student is on a day-to-day basis versus how they're kind of presenting themselves as a package per se on the day of the interview, right? To really kind of dig away. And sometimes the parents are ready to head upstairs to my office with the kid. And I'm like, no. We interview the students by themselves because, like Kyla said, I want to know from them who's driving this process, what stands out to you about CHCH, why do you like this school? And I do ask Kyla, like, what other schools are you looking at, just to kind of see, like, on the spectrum of your list, right? Like, okay, that makes sense, or whoa, this is way off. Maybe it's not the best fit school. So we as admissions directors really have to, again, make sure we're peeling back those layers and really, it's a discovery process as we're going through, the interview. But I would say that's one of the biggest parts of the application process, because you're really getting to see the student that they're presenting themselves on paper. How are they presenting themselves to you? And being able to communicate why they should be in your community.
Interesting. So what are the types of questions or things that you would ask to get to know the student and whether or not they're a fit for your school? Lisa, why don't you keep going with that?
Yeah. I always ask them, talk to me about a challenging situation that you've had and how did you overcome that, whether it was in school or outside of school, just to kind of see, does that student kind of have that grit? Do they have the capacity to, collaborate with an adult or ask for help or advocate and try to figure that out and be proud of that moment that they've overcome? I always ask them to tell me how they like to learn, because we're not a traditional learning environment. I think that's the beauty of independent schools, is that, again, you're rolling your sleeves up and being super hands-on with what you're doing. So really getting a sense of kind of who they are as a student. And then I also ask them like, what makes a good teacher in your opinion? And then how would a teacher that you've really connected with, because again, some of our students haven't been successful in school, but an adult or a teacher that really knows you well, how would they describe you as a student in that class? And for us, having been here so long and looking at what makes a successful student is really, are they able to collaborate with the adults in this community? Are they able to make those connections with peers? So for us, that's really a key thing of what we're looking for. And again, at every school, it's different. Every school has a different mission and the type of kid that can handle that academic environment. So I think it's really important for school leaders to really have a sense of what makes a student successful in that environment. So really tailoring my questions around that and trying to get more information.
Kyla, what would you add to that?
Yeah, there's two questions that I would add to what Lisa said, and one of them would be, when you close your eyes and you picture when you imagine what this experience would be like, what do you think? What are the things that come to mind? What do you hope it will be like? And then the second question, which spoke to something Lisa said earlier, was especially if they come in with maybe not so much of a traditional background. Maybe they've had a hiccup somewhere along the line. Maybe there's something that comes to light that we do want to dig a little bit deeper on, and getting them to reflect on that and I would say own that hiccup a little bit is also to be important. If a student reflects upon something and says, you know what, I just got caught up in a moment, and if I had to do it all over again, this is probably what I could have done differently. Without prompting, I would say, it's not like I want to lead them down a garden path and get them to answer that way, but you can tell pretty quickly if a student has authentically reflected on that experience. And I think you can ask the same question whether there's a hiccup or not. Tell me about your high school career or your previous school career. What would you have done differently? What do you think you did well? What strengths do you bring to the table? What's your chink in the armor, right? What's the thing that you have to work on? And I always say, look, we all have that thing. I mean, we all have something that we go, oh, why did I do that? And so what's that for you? And getting them to go, you know what, my friends say I talk too much, and like it just, or whatever it is, right? Getting them to really go through that self-reflection process, I think, is important too. Because I think you can peel back the layers, as Lisa said, and dig a little deeper.
One thing I want to add is I asked you at the end of the interview is that, if I'm talking to you, Kyla, and it's your senior year and you're looking back over your 4 years at CHCH, what goals would you hope to have accomplished during that time? And then that's really important to kind of get an inside look of like what they're hoping to either participate in, or like you said, like, I'm really good at this, but I'm not good at this and I need to work on that. And for them to own that and just kind of have a sense of just kind of that self-awareness, for me is super helpful, just to kind of, see what their goals are. And then when I'm meeting with the parents, what are their goals as parents and as a family, and do those lead up? Are the parents' expectations out of line, or are they in sync with what their child's goals are too? Because it's a partnership. You're not just, working with the student, it's really the entire family. So I think that's important to get a sense of that as well.
I remember my middle school and high school years vividly, as if it was yesterday, because, obviously it wasn't that long ago. And I was a very shy kid. And, the idea of going to a school interview probably would have made me really, really nervous. What would you say to a student such as myself to make me comfortable and feel at ease in the interview process and really open up to share the things that you're trying to learn?
Yeah, I would say we always give them a tour of campus first, right? They're not going right into the interview. So they're walking around as a family with the student tour guide and just kind of taking it all in. For some students, they might be coming from an independent school that goes through 8th grade, so they're kind of used to that environment. And for some kids, this is a whole brand new experience, right? So just to kind of ease them in, take the tour, and then when they come back, just kind of taking some time to reflect on that. But I always say, is this your first interview? And then if they say, yeah, I'm like, you know what? It's really a conversation with you and I. It's nothing to be nervous about. Again, for who our students are, sometimes they have high verbal skills, right? And that's kind of their thing. But for other kids, they are more introverted and shy, like Darren might have been in his middle school or high school years. And so, I say it's really just a conversation. It's a chance for what I'm going to learn on your application to come to life. And you know what? To be honest, you're interviewing us as much as I'm interviewing you. Right? At the end of the day, it's all about fit. And if this feels right to you and you feel connected here, and that's okay if it's not, but if it is, that's great. Let's talk about that. But it's just, making them feel comfortable and just, it's a back and forth. They're not on the hot seat. It's really for them to be able to shine and for me to get to know who they are. And I say, you can ask me questions too. I'm not going to just be asking you questions. So just kind of getting that from the get-go, right front and center, I think kind of relieves some of that anxiety or stress. And we do a lot of prep before a family arrives on campus, just to say, we're not a school with a dress code. So, feel free to wear what you'd like, so I think those things, and just kind of, like Kyla said, doing your research and knowing what the school community is about ahead of time, I think kind of relieves some of those anxieties. So we try to give some tips before the student even arrives for their visit, just to kind of know what to expect as well. Because I will say the parents are just as anxious, if not more, than the student. So sometimes they're harder to work with. So, yeah.
I bet. Kyla, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. I mean, I do very similar to what Lisa shared. There's a couple caveats to that. I think, sometimes I gauge the situation. Like, if we're sitting in the waiting room and we're all talking and we're having a casual talk, but I'm learning lots through this casual conversation about the child, about the parent, about their expectation, I'll just start asking the student questions that I would have asked in the interview, just to see, how they're answering. And then, depending on how it goes, I might go, hey, guess what? You just did the interview. Like, you're done. You didn't even realize that what was happening because we were having such a great conversation. I sort of read the situation and how things are going. If it's an incredibly shy or somewhat introverted student, I might start out by saying something like, "Are you nervous? I bet you're nervous." And they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm so nervous." And I'll say, "Okay, just breathe. Just breathe. It's all going to be okay. We're just going to have a conversation. I expect you to ask me some tough questions, maybe that I'm going to struggle with, and I love that, so it's okay. And if I don't know the answer, I'm going to say I don't know, and it's okay. So this is just an opportunity for me to get to know you. And so the more you share, the better job I can do. And the other thing I always tell students is, look, I'm on your team. If you at the end of the day go, oh, Bolles is not the place, I'm okay with that. This has to, as Lisa said, has to feel good. You have to listen to that little voice in the back of your head, or that intuition in the pit of your stomach that goes, ooh, this is an ouch moment. This doesn't feel good. This is not a place where I think I could really see myself. I think we would all agree that's okay. It's really okay. I think setting the tone of comfort is really important in that situation. I would say I've been known to do interviews walking around campus with incredibly nervous students. In fact, one of the hardest interviews I ever did was with a friend of mine's child, who clearly the friend had prepped the child in not so much of a great way. And that child burst into tears the minute that they walked into my office, not once, but twice. So on the third try, I said, you know what? We're not going to do this. We're going to walk. We're going to go for a walk. And when we went for a walk and I changed the setting and it wasn't so formal, that child opened up and she was more relaxed, and there was just a different feel. So I think most of us would read the situation too and say, we maybe need to approach this child a little bit differently and give them. We're all built differently. We all thrive in different situations. So changing the venue sometimes helps a little bit too.
Excellent. Yeah, I can see how that would definitely set some students at ease and probably make the parents feel better too, as they see you going out doing something like that. And I love the two-way street mentality of it. I think that's really important for families to think about as they go in. So I see that both of your schools optionally accept the character skills snapshot. So for any families listening to this that aren't familiar with that, It's an innovative online tool that we've created at EMA, which is the parent of admission.org, if you will, and admission chat. And it measures student preferences towards 7 key character skills. I'm curious, how important is character to both of you in the admissions process? Do you like to have students submit the character skills snapshot? I know it's not a requirement at either of your schools at this time. And if they aren't submitting that, do you feel like you're getting an adequate assessment of them through the interview and other means?
I mean, at the end of the day, I think the character skills snapshot indicates a preparedness on a social emotional level. And I don't know that there's necessarily a benchmark. I think we'd all have to look at that differently, and probably we're still in the process of collecting some of that data. I think Lisa used the 2 words that I love most when looking at sort of the social emotional preparedness, and that's grit and tenacity. What's your ability to dig deep in the face of adversity? Because, one of the things that I share with parents often is if your child struggles with certain elements socially, emotionally, nothing will exacerbate that more than being in boarding at a boarding school. Nothing. And so understanding your child's ability to handle those moments in the face of adversity, such as I have 3 tests this week and 2 projects, and I have a cold, and I'm not at home where my mom's, doing my laundry, making me some soup, and, wrapping a blanket around me as I study. I'm having to be pretty self-sufficient and figure these things out. And so I think that the character skills snapshot gives us an insight into that child on a social emotional level that we may not necessarily get from the traditional application process. It's fundamental to know that about a student, specifically, I would say, for the boarding piece, because again, I think the boarding piece is just an added stressor, sometimes to already, high rigorous academics, pretty high expectations, engagement in many levels. And then you add in, and I don't live at home, and I have to do all my own laundry, and I have to be pretty self-sufficient. And so it gives us insight into, their ability to thrive in that, independent world a little bit more.
Yeah, and I would agree with everything that Kyla said, right? It's just an added layer to really get to know the student in a different way. And I think, Kyla makes a great point that especially in a boarding environment, because for a lot of our kids, they're not coming from another boarding school, right? So that's the hardest thing to kind of assess, that minus that family dynamic, the family support, everything that they're getting, and then plop them into a dorm situation where they're going to be gaining that independence. And of course, there are so many dorm parents and community members to help them, but what is their grit level? How are they going to thrive in that environment? Or can they ask for help? Can they advocate? And being able to do those things. And of course, it's going to be, a tough transition for some, but do they have the ability to be able to kind of make it through there? And, for some kids, if maybe perhaps they're coming from a public school, that just hasn't been the best experience. And so teacher recommendations aren't really going to reflect who that student is in a different environment where they do have smaller classes and some academic support, but they also can be challenged where they thrive. It just, again, adds that extra layer of really getting to see that student's profile in a different way. So for us, it's just another added piece that's super valuable just to kind of get a different perspective of that student's profile.
If I can add, I think the other thing that it does, and as I said, there's not really a benchmark. I think we're sort of still collecting data. But the other thing it allows us to do is if we see that there's a certain area where maybe that child is still developing, it allows us to say to dorm parents and advisors and other folks, look, this child probably needs some help or needs some tools in this area. They're not there yet. So just so you know who that child is, we can give you what they're interested in, where they're from, all of those sorts of things. We can even tell you a little bit about their character, but this gives us even much more supporting anecdotal evidence to say to folks who are going to be working with these students on a daily basis. So here's some areas that they need to, there's growth opportunity for this child here. So it's not a pass or fail or a make or break. It's more just who are you and how do you handle, situations, and where's the area opportunity for you to improve and grow and evolve.
Wonderful. Thank you. So as students are thinking about preparing for the interview, Lisa, you sort of mentioned dress code before. I'd be interested in, digging into that a little bit further and what should the kids wear at each of your respected schools? But also, should they bring anything with them? The parents might be thinking, do I need to fill out the application in advance? And, if they're a student that say, is interested in the arts, should they bring a portfolio showing some of their artworks, things like that? So, Kyla, why don't you go first with that, please?
Yes, and yes. I use a phrase with our students, both who are currently here and many folks, dress for your audience. Just know who you're interviewing with, right? I mean, be comfortable. You're going to be walking around campus, be comfortable, but, just be appropriate. And every school's got a different dress code. I mean, so know your audience, know who you're interviewing with. If you're going to be shadowing for a day or spending the night, if your experience allows that, then just dress for that experience. Just know what's going to happen. And if you're not sure, ask prior to. I would say all of us love engagement, reaching out. Hey, what is there anything I need to know before my interview? Is there anything I need to know about dress code? Here's what I hope to see. We love that. I mean, it just helps us, get to know you, get to know the student better, but also build that experience to meet what they want to see during that time. If you are an amazing pianist, yeah, you know what? It's okay if you say, do you mind if I just sit at this piano and knock something out for you? Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. I've had kids play the trumpet, the violin, sing, share videos, share a go-kart race. I mean, you name it. And we love it because it allows us to really get to know the child. Do we want to see all of your participation awards? Probably not. But if it's something that you're, really, if it's something that you're super passionate about, that you think you do well, and you really want us to know about you, then yes, just share that with us. Share the experience of whatever it was with us. Again, we don't need to know that, you played in a tournament in hockey in the 5th grade and you got, more sportsmanlike. We don't, unless that's the most proud thing that you've achieved, then we probably don't need to know that. But things that really add to what you will bring to the school in terms of who you are, but also, sharing with us who you are beyond the questions that we ask.
Yeah, because I agree with everything, Kyla. Yeah, I'm like, yes. Yeah, and it's just, for us, it's like, wow, then you can kind of say like, wow, that's an amazing portfolio you have there. And, my visual arts teacher would love to see that. Or I can see how you could apply that in the visual arts classes here at CHCH. So it just kind of helps make those connections and bridge that. And like Kyla said, we as admissions people try to get a lot of information ahead of time. So that way we can give you the best possible experience once you're here on campus. So if you are an athlete and you're an amazing lacrosse player, I'm going to make sure that lacrosse coach is available to say hi to you and talk a little bit about that program. And so it's a back and forth, right? So it's as much as we know about that student. And I think this is extremely helpful too for that shy kid. Like once you kind of get that topic that they are so proud of and love talking about, that is $1 million right there. It just like opens up that conversation. You can kind of see the weight off their shoulders and just, so the key things like that. But 100% agree with what Kyla said. Just know your audience. And it's, again, all about best fit and where you're going and how you can see yourself in that environment or community. So I think the more they can prepare and the more information we know, the better experience it will be for everybody.
What about the other end of that spectrum? Is there any topic or, information that perhaps they shouldn't share? Any experiences where, kids have said things where you're like, maybe don't tell us about that. Lisa, can you touch on that, please?
In a way, it's kind of good if they say something.
I was just thinking that exact same thing.
For us, those whoops moments are almost kind of good for us just to kind of again, really kind of get an insight to that student and such. To be honest, like the more transparent a family is during the process, the best it is at the end of the day for everyone. I was just talking to a mom on my way in, and I said, she was worried because a lot of our kids, they might, struggle with executive function skills or might have ADD or ADHD and have some neuropsych testing done. And I said, that's extremely helpful for us, right? We can be proactive with your child instead of reactive. Like, had we just known that since the first day of school, now we're 2 months in, it's so much better. So for us, I love the openness and the transparency. And again, it's that at the end of the day, we want to make sure your child could be successful in our schools, right? And so the more information we have, I agree with Kyle, there's a stop, right, to that. We don't need to know every single thing, but what's most relevant as they're transitioning into their high school experience that can help us. Parents are their child's first teachers, right? They know them best, hopefully, in most cases, right? So how is that information valuable? So I look at those kind of oops moments like as a helpful thing, just to kind of be like, oh, tell me, let's expand on that a little bit.
I agree with everything Lisa says. I can't think of anything that has been shared with me that I went, ooh, I don't know that I would have shared that. I can think of things parents have shared that I've gone, I really don't need to know that. I can think of moments that were pretty non-traditional that actually made me laugh because it broke up the monotony of just interview, where it sounded fairly the same. I said, if anything, I would say, don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Don't tell me that, you just don't tell me what I can read in your application, right? Like, tell me more. Who are you? Don't be afraid to overshare some of the things, like what you do when you hang out with your friends. I would say two things that happen, that I've seen happen is students will share more with other students. So I would say, like, probably everybody, you need to be mindful of what's on your social media. Be really mindful, especially when you're touring and you're with an admission ambassador and you share that with another student, and that student says, Miss McCann, is this really this child that came and interviewed? There's some not so great things on here. I would say, you'll get even more authenticity with student to student, and then getting that feedback from your ambassadors is pivotal. And I will share a funny anecdotal moment that broke up the monotony for me, and it still makes me laugh to this day. I interviewed a student who showed up in the Charlie Sheen shirt, from yeah. And he was quite funny. He was a little eccentric, I could tell from the start of the interview. And we were in the middle of the interview. He had shadowed for the better part of the morning, and he, in all seriousness, stood up and said, do you mind if I take a break? I really need some more of that hot chocolate from the dining hall. I mean, I'm just really craving it. And I thought, well, yeah, absolutely. You should get up and go get some more hot chocolate if it's going to make you, and he was, with all sincerity, like, I really need to do this right now. And I thought, well, it's okay. This is clearly important. He liked the hot chocolate. We need to go make this happen. And, I wasn't annoyed. I was more like, well, that was an authentic moment. I mean, it was clearly on his mind. He wanted to do that. And it was a pretty non-traditional interview in every aspect. And yet, that's the way his brain worked, and that's okay. And I actually enjoyed it. It still makes me laugh to think about it when I think about the whole picture of this young man on my couch, not at all reserved or anything. And I asked him what his proudest moment in his life was. And he said, you know what? In the 7th grade, a girl actually talked to me. And I thought, how can this child is just, everything it was truly authentic. And, maybe some people would have interviewed him and went, oh my gosh, but I interviewed him and thought, you can't get much more real than we've just gotten right now. I'm okay. I can work with that. If you know what you're getting, we can figure it out.
Transparency is the moral of the story there. I think we're taking that away. Let's talk a little bit about the parents. Because Lisa, you mentioned before of the, separating the parents from child during the interview. And we offer some advice on admission.org where we encourage them to practice interviewing with their kids or have a neighbor practice interviewing with the kids. And we even have sample interview questions, that sort of stuff, which I know toes a very fine line with admission teams. There's certainly a difference between practicing and coaching. What would you say to parents in that regard? And Lisa, why don't you go first, please?
Yeah, I think just kind of the typical do's and don'ts of an interview, just to kind of prepare. But every director or associate or whoever's doing the interview, they all have their different styles, right? And there are going to be different questions. So there's only so much you could prepare them for. And if you over prepare them and then they're not ready for that particular question or style, it almost does a disservice to the student in that moment. I think just having them believe in their child, right? That they've come this far. There's a reason why you're applying to this particular school, and just really, just making sure that the student can just kind of, again, be their authentic self. I think, I think if you over prepare or try to do too much, it gets the student anxious and they can't focus on, kind of really what they want to talk about. And they're thinking about, oh my God, my parent told me to do this. And it just is a distractor. Sometimes I like what you just said, maybe having a neighbor or someone who's not the parent kind of do some interviewing tips or prep. I think that would be a better suggestion, I would say, because it kind of takes the stress off of that. But, and always after the interview, I always say to the parents, like, Kyla just did an amazing job. She just, and then I was like, oh, the real test is your parents now. Let's, so I said, I hope they don't mess it up, just to kind of like joke a little bit about that, to know that the student did a great job and they owned it. But I would say don't over prepare. It's going to stress the kid out and then just take away from the naturalness of a conversation, I would say.
I think I would add, and Lisa's probably going to laugh because we know each other well, and I can be a little bit of a traditionalist in this aspect. And I'm a big believer in good manners all the time. I mean, eye contact, shake a hand, thank you. Again, I think it says this is a place I want to be. Even if at the end of the day you said, this isn't for me, thank you for this experience. I really appreciated it. I think I believe in some of the, just manners. Again, just knowing your audience and some manners and being able to and also. I think from a student perspective, it goes a long way. And I know this is one of the questions as a follow-up, but it goes a long way when families say, can I have my student ambassador's email? We just really want to write them a thank you note. They really were phenomenal. Or, after a visit day, we send thank you notes, but it'd be nice to, it's always nice just to have that follow through from the families that says, hey, we really enjoyed it. We especially liked when, Lisa did this or showed us this or spoke about their own experience. So I always fall back on just manners and it's, and the other part I would say is don't blindside your child. Don't show up at our schools without your child knowing that that's what you're doing. And we've all had that, where a child shows up and they're like, what am I doing here? Or, I didn't know I was interviewing, and, I'm not even sure this is what I want. And there's a misalignment between parent expectation and what the student really wants. I mean, we've all experienced that too. So it is important to talk about this prior to coming for the visit, because we'll know. I mean, we'll know because we're going to talk to the child, and the child is going to share. They're going to say, look, this wasn't my idea. This was my parents' idea. And I will say, for all of us, that's when I say, well, you know what? I'm on your team. Let's talk about why you're not interested, and if we think we can get them to kind of understand, that's great. But if not, I mean, it's kind of just been a hard, visit for everybody, I think. So really, really talking about your child about this experience prior to is the best preparation. But I would agree with Lisa. You really can't over prepare them. I mean, just don't do that. Just, and the only other thing I would add is do your research. Just get on the website, talk to people, read, look at all the social media outlets. You can learn a lot from the social media outlets. So I would just say, look at all those things too.
As a parent, what I'm taking away from, what both of you are saying is to really know your child. And so if I have a child that is introverted and shy, that perhaps having a neighbor ask him a few questions just to get him used to the scenario is a good idea. If I have an extrovert, we probably could skip and go straight past go on that one, right? And so it's really the moral of the story for me here is try not to put undue pressure on your child. And Kyla, you did address the gratitude thing, which I did want to bring up because I've seen, obviously a handwritten note shows that they spent a lot of time and that they were really thoughtful about it. And I've heard other admission directors say, yeah, handwritten notes are great, but honestly, I prefer an email because it's easier for me to respond. We've got so much going on at that time of the year. Where do you guys sit on that fence?
I'll weigh in first. And again, I think this is the traditionalist in me, which I know people will be shocked to hear. I love a handwritten note. I mean, I love writing handwritten notes. I love a handwritten note. But I also realize that, I'm the proud owner of a 28 and a 24-year-old. I mean, handwritten notes are not the thing. So I get it. But I do think, even whatever platform you're on, whether it's a quick WeChat or it's a WhatsApp or it's a text or it's an email. Hey, Miss Mac, that was awesome. Loved it. Or even from the parents, some sort of follow-up is important. And just as it is important for us and our teams to do it, it's important for, I think, on the flip side, for the student and the family to do it. Again, I love a handwritten note, so I can't, that's my personal preference.
I would agree with Kyla that for me and my team, we actually write a handwritten note to every family who comes to the school for an interview. So I think I kind of instill that at the beginning from this end. And I love getting the notes, and it just shows, wow, this kid's like super interested. I take note of that. Like I keep track of all that information too, that like, wow, they were super interested in our school. They really liked it. And that shows me that like they're taking that extra step to do that. Of course, handwritten notes are great, but I think at the end of the day, any form of thanks is super appreciative and knows us that, again, as we're doing, I said this multiple times during this conversation, but best fit, right? That this family gets it. They're connected. They understand our mission and see the fit. That shows that. And then I was super surprised when I came in the other day. I actually got like a handwritten note from a student to thank me for his acceptance box, right? Like, so it wasn't just the interview, but just like, thank you for accepting me into CHCH, like, taking the time to do that. We do an acceptance video like many schools, and a lot of people reply to that. But this kid right here, like, I was like, yes, Sam. Like, I was so excited to see that, right? So that just kind of shows me their investment in this process. So I think it's always sweet to get those little touches. So yeah.
Awesome. I think thank yous and gratitudes are a logical conclusion to this episode. As you both have been awesome today and shared a lot of great advice. I really appreciate it. I'm sure the listeners do as well. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having us. Happy to do this. Yeah.
Thank you.
And for everyone listening, thank you for joining this admission chat. Please look for another episode soon. And for more insight into the private school application process, visit admission.org and check out our Admission Academy live webinar series. Thank you. Take care, everyone.